Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, those of you in the audience and those on our live stream. We'd like to thank you for being here or tuning in on live stream. This is an opportunity for the state Black Caucus of state legislators to share with you in a briefing perspective and at the same time to receive input from you as to priorities that we're considering and looking at. I've sort of gotten off into the area for the chairman. Please accept my apology, sir. And now we're going to go down the line so that you will know who all we have here, and then we move into our program. Mr. Chairman, if you would, Sam McKenzie.
Thank you, Representative. Ooh, wow, sorry. Thank you, Representative Hakeem. And it's a pleasure and an honor to be here tonight. My name is Sam McKenzie, 15th District, Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm just excited to serve as the chair of the Black Caucus. We have an exciting time. Unfortunately, there's a lot of things that happened this last session that just put a black eye on the state, but we're going to build from that. We're going to turn those lemons into lemonade, and that's what we're doing. And we'll talk a lot about that. But again, thank you all for allowing us just to come and share. And we really want to hear more than we say. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Representative Jesse Chisholm out of Memphis, serving the 85th District. It's just an honor to be here with you all. It's an honor to be up here with my colleagues who we fight tirelessly at our state capitol. And we're here to give information, to listen, and hopefully we come out here with something that will, some marching orders, so that when we go back in the session, we'll have some bullets to fight with. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm State Representative Antonio Parkinson, and I'm happy to be here. Last time we was here, we had a great time. I think it was about this time last year, wasn't it? And I was past chair of the Black Caucus. I'm also the quiet one up here and the shyest one up here of the bunch. And I represent the 98th Legislative District out of Memphis. Glad to be here. Love coming to Chattanooga.
Good afternoon, maybe I should say good evening. Also, I'm Representative Joe Towns, Memphis as well. As you'll see, Memphis is very well represented here today. We want to come and support our good friend, Hakeem, okay, excellent representative by way, we're going to say, of Dr. Brown, does an excellent job, is always fighting for this neck of the woods. Hakeem loves Chattanooga and the people that sent him here. So you all have been very, very wise in your choice, and he's excellent to work with. He has a much better personality than mine. He's just an even keel, great guy. I enjoy working with. He was my seatmate at one time too. I think he got tired of me ribbing him, so he had me move. He had me kicked out of the neighborhood. Okay, so y'all may want to speak to him about that a little later. But in all seriousness, it is very important that we come to this end of the state so you all know that all the members of the caucus, the Tennessee Black Caucus in particular, are mindful and concerned what is going on in Chattanooga. Hakeem makes sure that he ensures that we know so we can work together, because you have a smaller caucus, so we can work together and try to assist in bringing things to Chattanooga as we have done thus far. And that's excellent that we were able to secure the kind of resources for Chattanooga. And that's because we support Chattanooga and we support him. Also, being from Memphis, you know, you have a great history with jazz and blues and the history. It's so good to see that being preserved. I was talking to Brother Hakeem, and has said that this thing is 40 years old. The museum is 40 years old. That's excellent, okay? And you want to keep it alive and try to expose as many of the young people to the history of what happened in the day, and a lot of that music is absolutely the best music in the world, even today. So being from Memphis, you know, we really treasure that, so it's good to see that, and we look forward to the conference and hearing from you all and what you want to share with us that we can take back and try to make it a better state overall. So thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for hosting us here, as well as thank our chairman of the Black Caucus for making sure that we all got here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ramesh Akberry, and I represent the 29th Senatorial District in Memphis and Shelby County. I serve as the Senate Minority Leader. This is my 5th year in the Senate after serving 5 years in the House. It really does go by quickly. I used to be mistaken for an intern, and now with all this gray hair, that never happens. But it is a pleasure to be here. I always say, even though, we represent different areas across the state, we represent Tennessee as a whole. We want people to be able to send their kids to great public schools, to live in safe communities, be able to go to the doctor and not go bankrupt if they have a health problem. We want people to not just survive, but to thrive. And so I'm looking forward to this legislative update and also having a robust conversation with everyone, because what you all say really does fuel what we do when we get back to the General Assembly. Every year, the Tennessee Black Caucus presents a legislative and budgetary agenda to the governor and to Republican leadership and Democratic leadership too. And so this will help give us the tools that we need to craft that. Thank you.
All right, so we will start this process off, but I do want to make one change as you view this document, and we have several copies here on the first row. It says the 2023 approved budget items. Those were what we asked for. Those were not the approved items. So I want to be clear. Those are the amounts that we had asked the governor and the General Assembly for. So as you're perusing that. But I'll turn over at this point to our Vice Chairman, Representative Jesse Chisholm, who will make introductions on an exciting program that really should benefit the citizens of Hamilton County.
All right, thank you so much. I get to start with the good part. So we have some really important guests in here today that's going to tell us about a program for our small businesses of Tennessee. As we know, our small businesses are the lifeblood of our state, and today we have Lamont Price, the Innovation Director of the Tennessee Economic Community Development, and we have Mr. Hatch here, the Senior Associate with Launch Tennessee, and they're going to give us a few minutes telling about an exciting program that we have launched.
Testing. All right. Good evening, everyone. We want to thank the members of the Tennessee Black Caucus for inviting us out today. As was mentioned, my name is Lamont Price. I represent the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development, where our commissioner is Stuart McWhorter. I want to introduce my colleague.
Chris Hatch here with Launch Tennessee, Senior Associate on our Capital team. Absolutely glad to be here with each and every single one of you to talk about this really important program that was mentioned earlier.
All right, so this is an access to capital initiative through U.S. Treasury. So these are federal dollars that are being passed down to our department as the implementing entity. And it's a long acronym. It's called the State Small Business Credit Initiative 2.0. And this is an access to capital initiative where the state has been allotted approximately $117 million to help small businesses and entrepreneurs. Now, our state has branded this federal program Fund Tennessee, FUNDTN. And so under that program, it's basically broken out into 3 sections. One is called Lend Tennessee, which is these are true debt instruments for loans. Invest Tennessee, which Chris will talk about, which are true equity investments. And Assist Tennessee, or Assist TN, which is designed to assist small businesses and entrepreneurs to become capital ready. Now, again, this is not a grant. These are true debt instruments on the lend side, true equity instruments on the equity side, and it's a statewide program. And the debt side, or Lend Tennessee, we will be partnering with our community development financial institutions to help get capital out the door to our entrepreneurs who are looking for debt across Tennessee. And I'll talk briefly about Assist Tennessee. We're going to be partnering with our Tennessee Small Business Development Centers. We have 16 across the state, one here in Chattanooga, to help our small businesses and entrepreneurs to become capital ready. If they're in need of financial services, advisory services, assistance with their financial statements to obtain a loan, then that's what the Assist TN part would be designed for. And I'll turn it over to Chris to talk about Invest Tennessee.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lamont. So Launch Tennessee, we're a public-private partnership with the state, funded predominantly by ECD, our great partners over there. And we basically work with entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship support organizations around the state. And it's a really important piece of understanding as we talk about the Invest TN program. And I want to highlight our partner here in Chattanooga, CoLab, the company lab, if you guys are familiar with them. If you're not and you're an entrepreneur in the room or you're a budding entrepreneur, definitely become familiar with CoLab because they are a key part of the Invest Tennessee program. So as Lamont mentioned, Invest Tennessee is a true equity program. If anybody's ever watched Shark Tank or familiar with the venture capital ecosystem, you know, you are selling a portion of your business in exchange for capital, right? And the idea is that you and those partners that go along with you are hoping that that company will grow and return capital to the fund. And so it's not a grant. It's not. It's also not debt. You know, there's like I said, an exchange of value and ownership in the company. But the idea is that it's true risk capital, and we are looking to support innovative businesses from around the state. And CoLab here in Chattanooga is super important because they are one of our 7 partners around the state who we'll be working with to support what we call pre-seed and seed stage businesses. So super early companies, you know, folks who are trying to get an idea, you know, off the ground, and you know, anywhere between there. So definitely make sure that you are familiar with the CoLab team, and you know, hopefully Tashia won't mind me saying this, but bugging them as much as you can about it. So.
Yeah, and so a couple of things. So the equity program, it's $70 million of capital in the equity program, $47 million of capital in the debt program. And so if you want to sign up for updates, now you go to fundtn.org, and that's where you'll get updates regarding the program, fundtn.org. One of the highlights of the program is what's called SEDI, SEDI businesses. So it stands for Socially and Economically Disadvantaged Individuals or Businesses. So 52% of Tennessee's capital must go to SEDI founders. And the definition of a SEDI founder, if you're in what's a low to moderate income census tract that's called a CDFI investment area, you qualify as a SEDI-owned business. If you are a minority, part of a minority group, you qualify as a SEDI-owned business. It's a broad definition. And we are happy to pass along those slides and what that means in terms of making sure that you have access to the capital. It's not a guarantee that you're going to get a loan. It's not a guarantee you're going to get an equity investment, but there is application processes across both programs. And again, if you want to sign up for updates, you go to fundtennessee.org, and for Invest
Tennessee, investtn.org, you can go directly to the Launch Tennessee website as well. That's launchtn.org. And we also have some flyers in the back if you're looking for more information.
And so we can really get super deep, but we just don't have enough time, so we'll turn it back over to you all for any Q&A.
All right. Thank you guys so much for giving us that information. So just to save you all some handwriting, we put QR codes on your programs so that you all will be able to link to the QR code and be able to get more information. So we want to thank Mr. Lamont and Mr. Hatch for coming at very short notice. And I just want to thank you all for being here and turn it back over to our chair.
All right, and I'd just like to echo that in terms of this presentation, they had a great conversation with the Black Caucus when we were in session, and this program rolls out in July, so there was some apprehension because, hey, if you go there now, the money's not there, but what I wanted to do and what we have to do, let's fill the pipeline up. Oftentimes with these programs, we don't get the applications, especially from minority small businesses, and the money goes other places. So what I wanted to do is get out in front of you all as soon as we possibly could. So thank you all for agreeing to come and to listen. There's a lot of information that they covered in your handout, and the QR codes will give you all a wealth of that information. So let's give them another round of applause. So, and they're going to stay as long as they can, but I know they're going to be in Knoxville tomorrow, so this is a busy time for them. At this point, what I want to do is have each member kind of talk about some of your maybe 2 or 3 key either pieces of legislation or key initiatives that you guys are moving forward, and we do that in a couple of minutes so that we can make this a little more interactive. So I'm going to start with Senator Ackberry.
You would start with me, which is, anyway, okay, hold on. So I passed this year in the Senate 11 bills and got several things funded in the governor's amended budget. Let me see, I'm gonna pull this list up now. Okay, so I think one that was really important to us, especially given the discussion around books being banned, trying to kind of eliminate the teaching of certain parts of our history, Representative Harold Love and I passed legislation to require the teachings of MLK, the Civil Rights Movement, and Jim Crow in high school. Currently, right now, it's required in middle school, but it wasn't required in high school. So if people did not, complete middle school in Tennessee, they would miss out on that type of teaching. And the reason why it's important is because, we cannot move forward if we don't learn our past. And the generations that are coming up now, Generation Z and beyond, they're getting further and further away from that period, and they simply don't know. Many of them will never, not many of them, they will never know an era where there's no internet. So certainly it's important that they learn our history so that they do not repeat themselves. Another really cool piece of legislation that we passed had to do with the Department of Children's Services. We've had a lot of issues at our different facilities, specifically the Wilder Juvenile Detention Facility. One, we named the Education Center because normally when kids graduate from that high school, it says on their diploma, the Wilder Juvenile Correction High School. Now it will say the Representative Barbara Ward Cooper Educational Center, which Representative Cooper was my mentor, one of my favorite people on this planet, and I think she would be just thrilled to know that given her commitment to education that she's being honored in this way and that those students are getting a second chance with her name on their diploma. The last thing I'll say, because I don't want to go too long because there's a lot of stuff that we can talk about, has to do with, like I kind of hit on DCS, those who work at these facilities, whether it's Wilder or another one, they have to take de-escalation training. They have to take training so that they can learn how to mediate between the kids that are there being held, and so that they're leaning away from violence and more towards a safer resolution. And that has to happen every year, so they're getting the latest training. There's also a requirement that a mental health person be available 24 hours a day, and also that a chaplain in whatever religion that person practices be available as well. So we're trying little small things so that we can make sure that our children who are, juvenile offenders do not become adult offenders. And the last thing I'll say is there's a group in Memphis that really aids with people who are trying to go to college. They provide tutoring. University of Memphis students tutor these kids in high school, and they received $1 million in funding. The Memphis 13 Foundation, which they helped integrate the schools in Memphis, received $500,000 to put forth and teach the history of integration in the Memphis schools across the state. So I know these things aren't things that like move mountains, right? But they do help improve the quality of life. They do put emphasis on our shared history as Tennesseans, and they certainly will make a difference for those juveniles who are being held at detention centers. A lot of people want to look downstream and say, why do we have all this violence? They particularly say this in Memphis, when they never look at the fact that most adult offenders are juvenile offenders. And if we can really lean into rehabilitation, we can reduce recidivism and we can put people on a different path. So thank you.
Senator, thank you for that. Wow. Let me back up just a little bit. I'll deal with two pieces of legislation that I'd like to tout, especially because of the gravity of those two pieces. One passed some time ago as it relates to rape in the state. Rape was, before we were able to pass this piece of legislation, had a statute of limitation on it. Today, there's no statute of limitation on rape in Tennessee. If a person reports it within 3 years, because many times people don't want to go right to, they have to collect themselves and think about what they're going to do. But if they report it within 3 years, if you catch the person 50 years later, you still can prosecute them. And women and men need to know that's in Tennessee, okay? And it's a great piece of legislation, and we should share it because people need to know what is happening. It's been on the books now for a few years. Secondly, and all of you had an opportunity to vote upon this. Another piece of legislation that we were able to pass, took 6 years to do it, changed the Constitution by taking the slavery clause out of the Constitution. Well, I initiated that 6 years ago. You all had an opportunity to vote on it in Chattanooga, Knoxville, Memphis, all over, Jackson, because it was a constitutional change. It's in the 13th Amendment. If you look at the 13th Amendment, read the 13th Amendment, slavery exists under certain conditions, so to speak. That condition is if you are incarcerated, okay? Well, certainly that's been a scourge of this earth, scourge in this country, enslaving people, and under no circumstances, I thought, should any human being be treated as they are a slave, okay? So with you all's help, it could not have been done without you all's help. It passed, okay? It received actually more votes than the governor did. 82% of the votes. The governor received 80%. This received 82% of the vote. So I'm indebted forever for you all across the state providing us the opportunity to take that nonsense out of the Constitution. And now we're getting ready to do it at the national level to try to just take it out of the U.S. Constitution. But you all played a big part of that. Everybody across the state of Tennessee played a big part in it. And those are the two that I will share with you today. Mr. Parkinson, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Townsend. And just real quick before I get started, I don't know if it was mentioned or not, but you know, we a few years ago we set out on a path and an agenda to, you know, put our focus from the Black Caucus on, on health, education, and putting money back into the households so that we can improve the quality of life for the people that we serve. A lot of my legislation is still around those areas. One of the things that I heard we hear over and over is that we're not providing enough resources for our children. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. And you know, we were able to put $500,000 in the budget for youth sports to go directly to youth sports in Tennessee. That was the first time that the state of Tennessee has ever invested in youth sports. And I want to also thank Senator Bo Watson, who was very instrumental in that, and all my colleagues who voted for it and supported that. We also this year added another $500,000, you know, for youth sports in the budget. But this time we said we want to focus on teaching those kids soft skills while they are in the youth sports program. And the youth sports programs, that's your Little League baseball, football, and all of these other programs. You know, that's a great pipeline to begin to teach these kids, you know, soft skills. Because how many times have you pulled up at a fast food restaurant and you were basically treated like you weren't spending money there? And so we're trying to ensure that these kids get those soft skills and get them early. And also, these programs have to have a mentorship component to it and an education component to it also, in order to be able to receive some of that money that we were able to put into the budget for it. Also, this year, I passed 5 bills this year, and I want to touch on maybe 1 or 2 of those real quick. One was to create freestanding schools for licensed eyelash techs. Now, that might not sound important to a lot of the young men in here, but for the people who wear eyelashes, you want these people to be licensed and certified, trust me. You know, and so, but what we've done is we were able to cut through the $20,000 to $50,000 it costs for them to go to a full cosmetology school to get a license, and now they can go directly to an eyelash school, and that's only 300 hours and much less in the cost of tuition for them to go and become directly certified, or licensed rather, with the state of Tennessee as an eyelash tech. So it should create, it's a policy that creates businesses that create businesses. And so we're excited about that. And we did the same thing for natural hair with that also. And lastly, you know, most of you heard about the Tyree Nichols case. You know, everyone's heard about Tyree Nichols' case. Well, you know, given that all of the activity of this year's legislature, a lot of things went unnoticed because, you know, there was a lot of focus on, you know, the expulsions of our 2 colleagues, right? But I was able to pass a bill that would make it so that any of the bad officers, and we know that's a very, very small percent of the officers that are working that are in the uniform, but those bad officers that decide to kill or assault or maim or an individual, then they can receive the same enhancements that a civilian would if they did that to an officer. And so with this legislation, and I want you to think about this too, most of this language, a lot of the language came from law enforcement organizations. So they wanted to do something about those, that small percentage of the officers that are acting incorrectly. And so we were able to craft this language so that it specifically targets those individuals that are rogue and are not operating within the standard operating procedures of law enforcement. And so we were able to get that passed, and that's a pretty big deal, but we just hadn't had a chance. This is the first announcement of it, you know, since we came out of session, because, you know, we've been tied up with everything else. Lastly, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, just real quick, this is what I'm working on now, and I think this is very important. I'm pushing and working to expand Medicaid specifically for mental health only. And why is that important? When you think about the things that have happened in, you know, with Covenant School and, you know, all of these shootings that we're having and you know, and the mental health crisis that we're in, I'm trying to find a way for us to craft an ability to get 320,000 more Tennesseans insurance. But if the Tennessee legislature is not willing to expand Medicaid fully for health insurance, let's narrow out a path so we can make sure that people have mental health insurance, so we can start getting them the services and the resources that they need to help with mental health, with the mental health crisis we're in. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your indulgence. I appreciate that.
Hello, everyone. Again, I'm Representative Jesse Chisholm, and I have had the privilege of being on 2 crusades that I've gotten a chance to put a bow tie on now. One of which is the Fund Tennessee program, what you just heard about from our young man that just stood before you. We worked over the last 5 years with the Governor's Office, Economic and Community Development, and our federal government to bring down that $117 million so that small businesses will have a fighting chance, especially during this time where COVID has did a number on our small businesses, and we want to make sure the blood flow of small business still gets a chance to flow through our state. The other thing that I've gotten a chance to work on is ending solitary confinement for pregnant prisoners. You know, there is no reason for a pregnant person to give birth, to carry a child, or anything like that in a state of isolation. You know, what they were doing was creating monsters instead of rehabilitating people. So now that is illegal for them to have solitary confinement for our pregnant prisoners. So I just want to thank you all for all of your help. Thank my colleagues who fought tooth and nail to make sure that it gets done. And I want to thank our colleagues from both from outside of the aisle and across the aisle for working with us on getting it done. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to cover several things quickly. You know, Senator Ackberry and I was able to pass a piece of legislation that didn't seem to be controversial, but for some reason the other side made it a little bit, especially in the House. And all it did, you've heard all this about Department of Children's Services and how kind of horrific a life a lot of those children are having. The bill that we passed, just to try to get the ones that are becoming able to drive and get their driver's license, to be able to get their driver's license for free, not to have to pay that. It's a small amount of money for you and I, but it can be significant for them. So we were able to do that, but the conversation turned a bit ugly, at least on the House side, but we got enough votes to garner that one. Another really simple bill that we've been really trying to get passed for probably 4 or 5 years is to have wording crafted by the Secretary of State, but it'd be a requirement that each high school make an announcement, send an email, put a note in the package that says, hey, if you're turning 18, you may have the right to vote. And here's how you go about doing it. Simple, you think. No, it was, again, years in the making, but we were able to push that one across the finish line. Another bill which we got passed but hadn't got funded was a bill that Dr. Brown started, and it was a minority teaching fellowship. Currently, it's limited to, I forgot, $2,000 or $5,000. But what we wanted to do was expand it to the full cost, the average cost of tuition at our four-year universities. Again, whenever something has a fiscal note, it's tough. But we were able to get it at least passed to get behind the budget. But thank you for starting that train going, and we're just trying to keep that momentum. Yes, absolutely. And the last one, again, sometimes it takes years that I'll talk about that we've gotten passed, and this one's passed, but we got to get it funded. You all are now spending a lot of money on sports wagering. I'm sure not people in this room, but Tennesseans, DraftKings and all that, $68 million in revenue, tax revenue we receive. And each entity funds the department that runs it. So $68 million in profit. And right now, 80% of that goes to the education lottery, 15% goes to the general fund, and 5% goes for mental health. I want to take 2% of that 80%, which ends up being about $1.6 million, and create programs for our at-risk youth in both rural and urban areas. So we're getting some momentum behind that. It actually passed the House, and we'll continue to push that. I think Senator Ackberry and I are going to continue to push that one. But a lot of what we do and we're successful at is what you don't see. So there's two important things that did not happen. Ladies and gentlemen, there was an assault on Tennessee State University this last year. They came after the operations, they came after the president, and we were able to ward that off. You know, I tell folks, I represent the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. They accepted more students than they had dorm rooms for them. They bought out 2 hotels and called it the Vol Inn, and it's a great news story. Tennessee State does the same thing, and they're being crucified in our committee structure for doing the same thing. So we really had to shine a light on that. The students at TSU came through. Tennessee State is our only publicly funded HBCU in the state. So we were not going to have that happen. And they also tried to cut their board. Tennessee State tried to put their board under the one that manages Chattanooga State and the other junior colleges, only four-year college to do that. So we were able to belay those, but that fight's coming back, okay? So we would definitely need you all. And the second and the last thing I'll say is, and this, unfortunate, we had representatives to present bills to change the name. The street right in front of our office building is called Representative John Lewis Way. There was legislation introduced to change that to Donald Trump Way. And so legitimate legislation was introduced for that. And the same person, that happened, he introduced it on February 1st, which is very significant.
Black History Month. First day of Black History Month.
The first day of Black History Month. And what happened on the last day of Black History Month, Senator Ackberry?
This same individual, when they were contemplating using firing squads to execute those who were on death row, he suggested that we also bring back hanging by a tree. Yeah, bless his heart.
Bless his heart.
That was in my committee. And as a result, Mr. Chairman, we ended up what? That name never changed. So as a result, John Lewis Way is still what? Absolutely. Absolutely. So I wish y'all could follow us real time, because if you could follow us real time, you jump through the screen on some of this stuff.
Really,
Really.
it's horrific, but it's kind of made for television.
But what we have to do is maintain our cool and our level heads and be able to work across the aisle in order to make things happen. If you don't do that, the kinds of things you saw here with Brother Hakeem and the stuff for Bessie Smith and the stuff for the park won't happen. You cannot get emotional and flustered with this nonsense. You got to be effective. The trick is how do you become effective, stay effective, and bringing things back for the district, for the people that we're serving, okay? And Mr. Chairman, excellent leadership on that too. He led the charge on that. We really appreciate that, okay?
All right. I'll be brief, because the main part of what we're here for is to hear from you here in our audience. And it may sound odd, but over the past 4 years, on average, I've had 5 bills to pass through the legislature. This year, under my name, I only had 1. And I'm going to give you an understanding as to why. But the bill dealt with youth sports safety. And this is where they have equipment at the games for heart problems that young people may have. A young lady up in the upper East Tennessee, they had to give her mouth-to-mouth and all of those kinds of things to resuscitate her. So we worked with the legislature, when I'm talking about on both sides of the aisle, to get this bill passed in regards to safety at public games. If they're on public property, you're going to provide safety for these young people. You can't have everything, but there are limits you can do as far as types of, sports and injuries that are involved. So we worked to get that bill passed. Now, well, Hakeem, why didn't you get more than 1 bill passed? Well, I got 1 bill passed in my name and 3 passed in somebody else's name. But how you do that? Well, if the majority feels like they like that bill and they want that bill to come out on their side of the aisle, they change a few words here and a few words there, and it's somebody else's bill. I'd heard about this from some of my colleagues, but this was the first year I used to have it happen to me. So, as was said earlier, you can get all flustered and act up, so to speak, but how does that help your community? And so we accepted that. A couple of those bills, one dealt with women's care. There was a bill put forth. It was so restrictive, the abortion bill. And so we put forth a bill to deal with incest and rape and doctors. They wanted, if a doctor performed an abortion, even though it's for the health and safety of the mother, it was they're guilty until proven innocent. So we put a bill forth to eliminate some of that stuff. Now, the form that I had didn't make it, but form another colleague had did make it through. And, you know, it was better to get something through under somebody else's name than mine, just so we get something done to get that ball rolling, so to speak. One other item I'll speak of is family children's services. We wanted to lower the number of cases that a caseworker would have. I think in some instances it moves up around 40 cases per caseworker, and we wanted to cut that in half. Well, on the other side, they thought they could see something a little better, so changed a few words here, a few words there. Another colleague ran it. Well, we got it done, whether it's in my name or not. And so we're saying some things are worth arguing and fighting about, some things are not, and where you might not be able to have your name X on this, then maybe there are instances where funding for projects within our districts can come about. I'll stop there, Mr. Chairman, so we can hear from the people.
Yes.
Chair,
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry. Can I say one thing?
So just so y'all know, we've now gone into caucus meetings. So I'm going to recognize Senator Ackberry, Representative Parkinson, and then Representative Towns.
Sorry, I'm going to be real quick, but I forgot to say this. After 2 years of working, Representative Karen Camper, Minority Leader Karen Camper, and I passed legislation that will make Juneteenth a funded state holiday for state employees. So it was a big deal to be able to get that through. It will go into effect July 1. So not this Juneteenth, but next Juneteenth. And it really just shows how our country's changed. And last year we passed the Crown Act, and one of the first Southern state to do it, so that there's no discrimination based on a person's hair in the workplace, in school, and sports, and all of that.
Thank you. And I just, you know, we're here because we want to educate also. So I think it's important. I want to piggyback off of what Representative Hakeem said. Listen, when the process for passing a bill is this: you come up with an idea, send it to our legal department. Our legal department then sends it back to you for you to go over, make sure it's saying what you wanted to say in legal jargon, and then you put that bill on notice. It goes through between 3 and 5 committees. That's on the House side. And if it passes those 3 to 5 committees, it'll then go to the House floor for a vote from all of the members. And remember, there are members on these committees also that have to vote to pass it. So, and then if it passes on the House floor, it pauses for a second because it also has to go through the committee structure on the Senate side. A senator has to carry your same legislation, and it has to pass through the Senate committees and the Senate floor also. And if it passes in both chambers, it then goes to the governor's desk to be signed into law. And it has to match. And I want to just tell you that because if your member has been passing 5 bills per year and he passes 1 this year, if he passes 1 bill in 2 years in a full session, he's doing great. If he's been passing 5 bills, he's doing extraordinary. And if he's a Democrat, he's doing extraordinary. And so I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that when Representative Hakeem was saying what he was saying. And I also need you to understand too, there's a term for what he was saying happened to his bills. We call it bill jacking. Carjacking. You know, right. There's carjacking, then there's bill jacking. You know, Democrats will come up with a great idea, right? We'll run the legislation. They'll either kill it and then run it the next year, or they'll draft some language with looks almost identical to the Democrats' language with a few tweaks and kill his and run theirs. Right. But the beauty about your representative is he puts people over politics. You see, he didn't even trip about them bill jacking him, because if it's good policy, it's good policy, and he deserves a round of applause for that. So thank you for that.
All right, so at this point, you know, and I'll give a little bit of education, and I'm being a bit facetious, but kind of serious. In order to get as much dialogue and keep that dialogue as rich and full as we can, let's make sure we're asking a question that ends in a question mark. So, so please, 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 it doesn't matter the issue. We stand ready to answer any questions that you all may have, generally, or if you want to make it specific for one a member, you can do that as well. So, we have a microphone up front. If y'all like to go. Now, we can fill the time. Okay, thank you. And could you identify yourself? Thank you.
My name is Kelvin Scott, and I'm in my Representative Hakeem's district. And first of all, I would like to say thank you all for coming down and giving a wealth of knowledge and information that we can go back as community leaders and activists, where we can work with our representation to get things done, but mainly to educate everyone who does not know what's going on. So I want to thank y'all for that. The question that I have, I know it's been a big issue with the third grade testing and all those things around that. In my research, I've seen that most of the schools, high school levels, that is high performing public schools, they have smaller classroom size. What are y'all potentially looking at, or how can y'all potentially look at putting that across public school wide, where you have smaller classrooms to be able to get more of that hands-on teaching?
I'll touch on it, but I'll ask any of the members. So that's a great point. I mean, it's not rocket science. I tell folks, I'm a physicist by training. I do understand rocket science. This ain't it. It's a funding issue. We have to put more in the pipeline. There is, we just changed the way that we're funding our system. We've gone what we call the BEP, the Basic Education Program, to TISA. Tennesseans for Improved. I forgot what TISA stands for, but it's a different way of funding. But at the end of the day, it can be the greatest model, but you have to give it fuel, and we're not putting enough in our budgets. Even though they talk about increases, we're still in the 40s in terms of out of 50 states on per pupil spending. We're not putting enough money toward reducing class sizes, toward giving our teachers a living wage for a professional's living wage. So those are the two things. But I'll talk about the third grade retention really quick in case folks don't know. Beginning this year, and I'm sure you heard a lot about it, based on the test score, if they're not meeting a certain number, and we fought to have that number improved, or at least to have to where they can appeal it. But if they don't hit that number, they need to go to summer school. Still don't hit it, they're going to be retained. This has a snowball effect, and there's a lot of things falling out as a result of that. I do agree we have to improve our third graders reading, because you do learn to read up to the third grade, and then you read to learn afterwards. So there needs to be something. Just don't know if this is it, and we're not done with that. So if anyone else wants to comment.
So I serve as the second vice chair of education. I'm also the only Democrat, which is very difficult. You cannot second, and you cannot give a motion in a second on a bill. So, but the third grade retention law is extremely controversial. The good points of it are the intervention points, so the summer learning camps and the required tutoring in their fourth grade year. Now, this law was adjusted, and that won't go into effect till next year, where you can actually use benchmark exams and a combination of the TCAP. My issue with it is, one, the threat of retention, when you really need to actually be giving those children the confidence to learn. And two, the TCAP is not an accurate assessment of literacy. It includes grammar and spelling, and not necessarily reading comprehension. So certainly a portfolio should be used. With the TISA funding formula, I know at least in Memphis and Shelby County schools, they got about $150 million in additional funding every year. And there is funding for the tutoring and for the summer camps. But at the end of the day, we had a legislator that proposed legislation to increase class sizes this year. And so going in the opposite direction, and that's something that we really had to fight hard against We say we prioritize education. We say we want to be best in the nation, that we are best in the nation. But honestly, you put your money where your mouth is. We passed legislation to increase a teacher's starting salary to $50,000 a year this year. I think it's a step program. It'll eventually, in 3 or 4 years. But on the same token, we also eliminated the education unions from being able to use payroll deductions to pay their dues. And they just filed a lawsuit this week. So it's always 2 steps forward and 15 steps backwards. We still fight for these things, and I do think that the concept of catching literacy at 3rd grade is important, but keeping someone back to do that is not a way to make it happen, and it hasn't been successful. It creates additional anxiety. One, the school systems cannot even functionally carry 2 loads of 3rd graders, so they didn't even think about that part.
And here again, this is one of the times I think the state got it wrong. You remember that these 2 years were the years of COVID, okay? So children had to do a total different paradigm in terms of how they were learning. We know factually when kids are out of school for the summer, there's a little slippage, okay? But you're talking about 2 to 3 years of no teaching for the most part, okay? We never should have utilized that test this year. It was wrong. It's totally wrong to do it. It's not clear-headed thinking. 2.5 years, the entire world's economy was shut down. Everybody, we were going to the grocery store, getting a little gas, and staying at home, okay? That's what was happening. The kids were going stir crazy, trying to learn on computers if they could, and that started really, really late. So it's unfair what we did with the children this year. This happened all over the country, not just in Nashville. Happened all over the country, not just in Tennessee. The entire country had the same challenge. So we got it wrong, folks, okay? And for that, I have to apologize. We're still fighting it, as the chairman said. And to your question as well, we are still fighting to try to get those class sizes reduced. I had a call just the other day in Memphis, teacher. She has 27 special ed kids. No one can do that by herself. But she's there, goes there with a cheerful attitude, trying to accomplish the job. That's too much. Then coupled with all of the stuff they have to do, all the paperwork, all the other stuff they have to do, that's absolutely too much. So years ago, I chaired education for a long time until the parties changed and took over. The first thing they did was kick me off. And so I have to get it from these two now, what's going on with education. They kicked me off good, too. That's right. But the fact of it is, we're watching it, we're trying to do as best we can about it. Y'all keep raising the ire about these concerns, and hopefully this thing with the lawsuit is going to give us hopefully what we need. How do you test a person when you didn't teach them this time? Something about that's not wrong. You're a lawyer. How are you going to test me about something you hadn't taught me? For 2 years you didn't teach me. So we're trying to do what many of y'all think we should be doing, but it's a challenge right now.
Just real quick, myself and Chairman McKenzie and Representative Hakeem, we serve on the Education Committee in Tennessee House, and I implore y'all watch them committees, because it's going to be both entertaining and disappointing. And I just want to say this real quick. It is in that Education Committee where policies are created that actually drive teachers away from the teaching profession. And I tell them all the time, man, we are horrible at education. You look at the Tennessee Achievement School District, the worst in the state. You look at how teachers are leaving the profession that they were born to do, because we're killing their fire and their zeal for wanting to educate kids based on the policies that are created inside of the House Education Committee. And so that's part of why we can't get our classrooms down. We don't have teachers, because they're leaving. But thank you. I'm keep it short. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Aaliyah Hakeem. I'm Yusuf Hakeem's eldest daughter, okay? So, of course, I live in the 28th district with our parents. But my question is for Representative Parkinson of the 98th district, and that is Memphis. Okay. My question is, you said something earlier about Medicare becoming a part of mental health, or mental health becoming a part of Medicare. Well, where I work, I see a lot of people that come through that need mental health assistance. We have a mental health court, and then we have a drug rehab court or a recovery court. How, or is it even possible to put those two together for funding? Could those two courts, or could those two entities, or because they're all kind of mental health related, the drug rehab, the drug recovery court, mental health court, and then Medicare, how would you be able to integrate all of those issues or entities into Medicare, or even give those courts funding to help those people that need it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay. Thank you for that question, and stay up here if you don't mind. And so I want y'all to think about something. The commissioner of the Department of Corrections stated 72% of the inmate population in Tennessee prisons are on mental health medications.
Wow.
I want you to think about that. Let that marinate for a second. And further, I would like to, for those that are out here breaking the law that are not on mental health meds, how'd you like to be part of that 28% that's in there with everybody else that's on 72%? That's not a good place to be. And what that says is the prisons have now become the housing for mental health patients. When the state shut down most of the mental health facilities across the state, they then started arresting them. Here's another fact that the Department of Corrections Commissioner said. I said, so when this 72%, when these individuals get out of the prisons, how much medicine do y'all give them when they leave the prisons? We give them a 30-day supply. I said, what happens on day 31? There was not really an answer for that. What happens is, you're off your meds, you act up again, and you get arrested again, and they wonder why our recidivism rate is so high in the state of Tennessee, right? They are uninsured. But if we were to expand Medicaid specifically for mental health insurance, then we can get 320,000 extra people on the Medicaid rolls to be able to receive those resources, or at a minimum, be able to pay for the resources that they need when they go to see, someone like yourself or some of these other organizations. And so now, but the courts, with the way things are set up, with the structure that's set up right now, it's like you taking a drop of dye and dropping it in the Pacific Ocean and thinking that it's going to make a difference in the Pacific Ocean, because it's not. But we have to get people the resources that they need.
Very good.
Thank you.
Very good.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Reverend Ann Jones Pierre. Currently, I am president of the Chattanooga branch of the NAACP. All right. Now, would you all consider funding a study that looks at the relationship between children who are in state custody or children who are considered juveniles as it relates to their parents and the relationship? Now, my background is finance. I believe I know what the results of the study will be, that we're spending too much money on the wrong thing. On Saturday, the NAACP is sponsoring a juvenile justice seminar. Normally, we do criminal justice. As a result of finding a young lady who went to Georgia, her children were taken from her, I talked to Representative Hakeem and worked through the problem. Georgia told her the children were theirs. And so you can't take somebody from another state and claim them. So Representative Hakeem, who is my representative, worked with me and we got the kids back. But as a result, they went into state custody, and it was crazy from then on. Really, you need to determine the total problem of dealing with people who end up in prison, because that's a pipeline to prison. the children are on their way to prison because you take them away from their mothers. Now, we're the only animal, I believe, that keeps their children as long as they stay in our house. The rest of them wean them off and let them run out in the wild. God didn't make it that way. We are responsible for the children. Would you all please consider doing a study with some reputable people who understand? And I would like to applaud Judge Rob Filia, who is very concerned about the children that comes through the juvenile court. He's the juvenile court judge, the head one. So if you would please consider that, I think it would be beneficial. For example, one component of it, and then I'll end on this. If a man does not pay child support, where does he go? What sense does that make? Let the person pay what they can pay. How can you take care of yourself on a minimum wage job and pay the child support standard that is set by the courts? It is just taking the money from your state and you're spending the money on jails and things like that. Whereas if you spend it on working with the individuals, then you would have more children in college. You would have children who stay in the state of Tennessee instead of their parents telling them, don't come back.
That's right.
Go somewhere else. So let's look, if you would please look at that, I would certainly appreciate it.
So I'll touch on that now. I'll turn it over. So we have, I think Representative Parkins sits on that committee. We have what we call TASSER. TASSER does studies. I will say I have tried my best to get a couple of TASSER studies, one of which deals with the rate of incarceration for minor drug offenses. I just feel that in the 70s, folks and the 80s, folks from marijuana type charges got more than 2023, but I want to study for that. But we get turned down for a lot of those studies, but I see folks up here feverishly taking notes, so we will work toward that. The other piece that you ended on, several of us have pieces of legislation that deals with the justice system and child support. Because Tennessee is extremely punitive. Tennessee is the only state where, because it continues to grow while you're in prison, when you come out, you have to have 100% of your court costs paid before you can vote. We're the only state like that. So there's that. I know several members have things just to try to humanize the process. Again, child support is an awesome responsibility, and it's a major responsibility. But the right to vote is a right. So with that said, I'll ask if any other members want to comment on that. Yes, Senator.
Your point, I thought it was ridiculous when I found out that Tennessee's the only state where if you have back child support, you can lose your license. So given our poor public transportation system statewide, how can a person go to work if they can't have access to be able to drive lawfully? I passed legislation this year with the House Majority Leader, where a judge can decide at their own discretion, in addition to the current laws that exist, to allow the person to have a payment plan while they are driving, or even while they are to be able to get their license back and have a payment plan for the child support so that they can kind of pay as they go. But if the judge decides for any period of time they can't afford to pay it, they can suspend the payment until allow them to catch up. So it gives a little bit of flexibility, but it's very difficult. I want to make sure that I'm completely clear on what your study that you're looking for. You want to look at the correlation between the prison pipeline and children who have been put in DCS custody?
Well, children,
Okay.
not only in DCS custody, but say if you could have, now it is quite common for the child's mother and father to be in jail for various reasons. And so the child then becomes the object. And two, there are some foundations who have money to do studies. We might not just totally have to depend upon the state to do the study because, frankly, they might be biased in how they look at it.
Thank you. All right. So, do we have any other questions? We have two. Okay.
I don't have a
Good. So we are at, and we definitely want to be mindful of everyone's time. I know that schedule started at 5:30, so we want to try to end it as close to 7:30 as we can. And we're not going anywhere. But if we could keep our questions and answers kind of short, succinct, we get as many as we can. So thank you.
Good evening. My name is Marie Mott. On the fourth floor of our library, we have an innovation center that has a variety of resources. You can rent tools. There is a picture lab. There is a studio. There is Mac computers. I've made campaign T-shirts there. I've designed logos there. Anyways, it is only accessible to people who live in the downtown space. One of the things that a lot of us have in our communities are recreation centers. I would be interested in the idea, possibly just weighed out with you all, of many innovation labs in recreation centers. Children emulate what they see, and I love the fact that you're a physicist. My mother is a chemist. So being able to see Black people in different spaces, children being able to do things that they love and have more than just sports. No shade, but I'm just saying more. I'm a nerd. I want to read. I want to read. So can I have some books? Different things like that. Can we see about the idea of how do we scale that out into the community so those things are accessible? I can walk in my community. I have 2 different recreation centers that I can access by foot. So that's reachable to people, right? And that expands the idea of multi-generational access of interest to people in the community, where we can have elders that learn how to utilize technology and get on board with the future. That's just an idea. But, and again, I like that Chattanooga is famous for public-private partnerships. It would be prudent to work with corporations so that the state doesn't have to try to finagle the money. Like, make them pay for it.
Someone else stood up with a question. Did anyone have a comment to that? Mine is agreed, and that's a great idea.
Now, this question was sent in by someone, it's not mine, okay. Do any of the representatives foresee legal, medical, and recreational marijuana? And if so, would there be an increase in minority-owned businesses or dispensaries and things of that nature? Okay.
So there's been legislation proposed over the last 3 years, one to decriminalize marijuana, another to merely put it on the ballot so the people can decide whether or not to legalize marijuana, and the other one is to have a state medical marijuana program. All of those pieces of legislation, they died fiery deaths. So hopefully we bring them back this year to try to get something done. I was actually surprised of some of the support that we had, even though those 3 pieces of legislation failed. I had people who voted against it, then caught me in the hallway and said, hey, you know what? I actually agree with you. I'm just scared to do it right now. So hopefully when on the other side of the aisle, a lot of times I got to see the dollars and the cents. So this year, we're going to change our strategy and show them the dollars and cents so that, because I'm on the people side and they're on the dollar side. So maybe there's a way that we can bring both sides together so we can have a piece of legislation that's palatable to their side and ours as well.
So was that claps from all the weed smokers in the audience? Okay, all right, okay, I understand. Yeah, right. So I was fortunate, well, kind of fortunate, but unfortunate at the same time to actually get a weed bill to the House floor. I think it was the first in our history, and it didn't die, but it didn't pass either. So it just kind of sat in purgatory. And what it did was, it said that anything between an ounce and a half ounce will no longer be a felony, and it will reduce it to a misdemeanor because our marijuana laws are archaic right now. So anything over a half ounce of weed in your possession, up to 10 pounds. can get you the same sentence as someone that's convicted of homicide. So let me make sure that I'm clear on that. So you can have 3/4 of an ounce of weed and get the same sentence as someone that was convicted of homicide in the state of Tennessee. And that's archaic. That's utterly ridiculous. Real quick, I did forget to mention too that I passed a bill that would, when he brought up TASER, the Tennessee Advisory Commission on Intergovernmental Relations, I serve on that committee, and I did pass a bill that would have TASER to study passenger rail across the entire state, that would go from Memphis to Nashville to Chattanooga and Knoxville, and then Chattanooga to Atlanta also, which we're already starting to work on. And so that's going to be a very, very important idea, transportation idea, and hopefully we'll be able to see it in our lifetime. So just want to touch on that too. Thank you.
All right, I'm Eric Atkins. I'm the co-chair of the Unity Group of Chattanooga. And first, let me recognize we have had some victories. Now, we did get that slavery provision changed last year. You know, that clause in the Constitution that said, you know, neither slavery nor voluntary servitude except for punishment. So we did get that out. Amendment 1, I think it was. And we did get Juneteenth bill passed, which is a victory too. And we have to thank you for that. We worked close with Representative Hakeem for that. And Senator Akbari, we know you worked for 3 years or more on that. Now, I had a problem when it came to that bill. I'm going to tell you where it is. Because I was on my way to Nashville to testify for that. Had already arranged it with Representative Hakeem, and it's flaws in the system just for a citizen to testify. You can't find the form, so it has to get to you in time. You had to get it back to the chairman within 24 hours. You had to provide a written testimony just to testify. And my question is, how are we going to revise that system? Because if you have experts in Tennessee on important bills and issues that want to testify, we shouldn't be going through all these hoops and hurdles.
You're absolutely right. I love the way you described it. You were accurate down to the dotting of the I and the crossing of the T. Let me remind you that it didn't used to be that way. When the Democrats were in charge, we didn't do that. They changed it even on the House floor because they are culling or terminating debate. They don't want to hear the testimony, okay? You should be able to come up the day of, before the meeting start, as we used to, and get your name on the list and testify, okay? Happens in my city council, happens around the state, this, that, and other. But we don't have, at this point, we argue about it all the time, we debate it all the time because we don't like being cut off. We want to hear the people. We want to hear what the people have to say. But we are working on it a little bit at a time to try to make it happen. We've even had people that come up and was on the list, and because of whatever, they don't get an opportunity to testify. They've driven 200 or 300 miles. That's not fair, okay? And I feel your pain, and we're focusing on it, and that's fish we're still going to fry. We got to fry that fish a little later, but we're working on it. I have to apologize that it happened to you. Really do, because it shouldn't happen to you, but we know it happens, you know. But it happens to even us, okay? Come on, Senator.
The process is a little different in the Senate. The House has really developed these rules, the committee chairmen have, that completely destroy the concept of democracy in my mind. In the Senate, as long as you reach out to a member of the committee, you say you want to testify, we tell the chairman. If it's a situation where someone has driven a number of miles and we think that they're not going to get to them, they will bump them up to the front. Now, they do limit you to like 2 to 3 minutes of discussion, but what we do is strategically ask questions so that you can continue to talk. It really is ridiculous. When I was in the House, those rules did not apply. But come on over to the Senate. We'll get you on there. But I hate that you had to go through that.
Yeah, I was going to say that probably is, unfortunately, the best route. The House, and as we share your frustration. It's just like I say, the votes are going to be the vote. You're going to vote against it or for it, but give us an opportunity to bring our citizens in to say why they feel a certain way. Give us a minute or two to do that. There was one that Representative Parkinson and I was in the room, the representative from Oak Ridge, a huge, unneeded critical race theory to killing fleas with sledgehammer bills, and the first person called for the question. Committees are where we're supposed to vet these things out. By the time it gets to the House floor, it should be fully vetted. Killed the whole conversation. And so it's frustrating. So, and you know, and we also get in our cars and drive to Nashville as well, every one of us. So yeah, I don't have an answer for you other than elect more people that think like we do, and we can change some of those extremist house rules. Yeah, when we say call for the question, it basically cuts off debate. And it's supposed to be, and I've told the speaker this, you know, in terms of Robert's rule, I won't bore you all with that, but it's supposed to be an extreme thing. You have to get 2/3 of a body. And when the crafters created this Robert Rules of Order thing, they said, okay, we got to put the bar up there, so it shouldn't be happening every day. And I've said, I'm going to try to get a student to count the number of times in committee and House floor that we've called for the question on important pieces of legislation. It's in the hundreds, maybe even thousands of times by the time you get through all the committees. So I feel and share your pain on that one. So, you know, we extended this, but you know, the storm clouds opened up, so it's good that we went a little later. At this point, I just want to allow each member to kind of close, but I do see my fraternity brother, former candidate for state senator and current deputy police chief, Glenn Scruggs, in the back of the room. Let's give him a round of applause. Good man, good man. Just want to first, I'll start it off by just saying thank you, and we'll end with your representative, who we want, who we love, and want you to continue to bring back to Nashville. Just thank you all for the opportunity. This helps us. You all don't know how much this helps us, because when we're getting cut off, and some people ask me, I met with Chancellor Plowman of University of Tennessee today. She said, how do you do it? And it's tough. It's tough, but it's the enthusiasm you all give us to say, you know, we've gotten some victories. We've cut some things off. So thank you all for just agreeing to come out on a Thursday where you could be in a million other places, just to kind of hear what we have to say. So with that, I'll go down the line here.
I just want to thank you all for being here today. It's such an honor to be able to speak with you all. It's an honor to be able to work with my colleagues up here. You know, I'm reminded daily, you know, there's a rumor that a lot of our legislators don't work together, but as you can see from the stage up here, that's not true. You know, I found out when I came 5 years ago that we truly do have gladiators in suits who have been fighting on our behalf. So it's an honor to be up here with you guys, and it's more of an honor to be able to represent you all and get feedback from you all. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to say thank you also. I've been in the legislature for 13 years now, and I was a freshman, and I remember Dr. Brown. She was one of the ones that greeted me when I first got there, and I never wanted to be on the receiving end of what I would call one of them big mama chewings, right? And Joanne Favors, she greeted me when I was there, and I was saying that to say that y'all have a nice line of history when it comes to representation, because none of y'all folks play when they're up there, man. And look, I don't know if you've ever watched when you see Yusuf Hakeem get on there. Who got the beat button? Because I want to. but to see Representative Hakeem get on him, man, Representative Hakeem, man, don't play, man. I'm serious. He does not play, and I'm so proud of him as a legislator. You know, and if you just real quick indulgence, man, if you know him, he's quiet. Right? But when he has something to say, man, I'm like, ooh-wee. Yeah, and so, but we're extremely proud of him, and again, thank you all for allowing us to be here. I always enjoy coming to Chattanooga. It's absolutely wonderful. Appreciate you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Representative Hakeem, as well as Chairman McKenzie, thank you all for making this possible, and thank the people for coming out, participating. We hope that this does you some good. We really hope that this does some good. This, in our opinion, is what we consider as really true democracy, coming out and touching the people and talking and letting you all tell us what you want us to hear. We really appreciate your input. And remember this, it's still your government regardless of who's in charge. You have just as much right to have input and say what you want done. It doesn't mean we're going to get everything we want done, because sometimes Democrats miss the mark too. But what we ought to try to be about at all times is taking care of people, especially taking care of hurting people, especially taking care of sick people, especially taking care of children. And we need you all to stick with us, and we need a few more seats. We got to figure out how to get 8, 9, 10 seats to stop the hemorrhaging, the supermajority, okay? So I'm going to encourage you to go out and work in people's campaigns that'll help us. It's not good for one side to have all the power. You get the big head, and you make mistakes. You listen to yourself. We need balance, and hopefully we bring balance. And we're small in number, but as you can see with some of our victories, we have some mighty victories. And it's been that way for a little while. We're small in numbers. I started 30 years ago. There were like 64 Democrats. Today, there's like 24, 25. It's gone from that to this. However, we still don't back down when we think we're right, and we don't mind mixing it up. Sometimes y'all may see that too on television. We want the kids to see a lot of this stuff, but we have to mix it up sometime because they'll push us around, and we don't go for that. And as I said, Hakeem is a jewel. He's right in the middle of it, and y'all have, as already been indicated, great folk you sent there that takes care of business for Chattanooga. And if Hakeem think we're not paying attention, that's the reason I'm here, to the ancillary areas like Chattanooga, because Memphis and Nashville, the big cities, he will make sure we know it, and we get on the good foot coming up here to try to do what we can to make sure that this area does not feel unattended to. So thank you again for your civic participation. God bless you.
Alrighty, I will certainly echo what Representative Towns said. Anytime we have a discussion and we say Memphis, Representative Hakeem says, now wait a minute, I heard Memphis, I heard Nashville, but what about Chattanooga? So know that you have someone who always carries this area, Hamilton County, on his back and does a phenomenal job doing it. You know, again, it's a pleasure. I represent Memphis as far to the west as I can see Arkansas from my living room, and it's like not a joke. I really can.
You mean not Russia?
Right, I know. So it really feels refreshing to be able to hear from folks in different parts of the state, because at the end of the day, no matter what grand division, we're all one Tennessee, and we all want this to be a great state for people to work and live and play. And that happens when democracy works, and when it doesn't, that's when things are difficult. That's when we have a Tennessee for some and not for all. And our goal is to make sure the Tennessee government works for all. Also, I will say the Tennessee Black Caucus of State Legislators is a nonpartisan, bipartisan organization. We just don't have any Republican members yet. I don't think we will.
Yes, and absolutely. You know, I think it was former U.S. Representative Gray said, and this really is kind of the mantra of the Black Caucus, there are no permanent friends, there are no permanent enemies, only permanent interests. And that really is how we operate within the Black Caucus, be it red or blue. If it lifts the boat of African Americans, we're all for it. You all will, if you leave us your email, you all will get a survey in the next week to ask you all how it was. Be open and honest. We'll ask you a few questions, how we can improve, and some things, maybe some legislation, some things that you want us to consider introducing. So it really is, we're sincere. We want to hear from you. A lot of our legislations, pieces of legislation come from you all. So with that said, I'll give the final word to Representative Yusuf Hakeem.
Let me say, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for your time, for coming out and being a part of this. It helps us to grow and understand the interest and the needs of our community to hear from you. So it's very meaningful. And to our jewel, who is with us this evening, Dr. Brown, we say thank you for taking time to come and be with us. And my colleagues, I'm very fortunate to have colleagues of this caliber who we find ways of working together. We don't agree on everything, but we find ways of working together and getting things done. You learn the process, you learn how to work together and get things done for the interests of the people. And so I'm so blessed to work with a group of people like we have up here. So once again, thank you. We will be back again next year, and looking forward to hearing from you. Have a good evening.
Thank you all.